Hey guys, so some of you may have seen my video, The Roles of Each Instrument. In that video, I talk about various instruments and how they have a specific job, and if they do that specific job, then that can make the song sound really tight and cohesive and prevent it from sounding like a big, chaotic, jumbled, muddy mess. So knowing your role is very important. If you haven't seen that video, I'll provide a link so you can check it out. Now, somebody asked me if I could make a similar video talking about the role of vocals. Now, I think this video is going to be more for recording and mixing, because in a live setting, the vocals are fairly simple. Typically, most bands have just one vocalist, and they're just going to sing the melody of the song. And maybe some of the other band members might provide backup vocals from time to time, so it's a fairly simple thing. But we're going to look more at a recording kind of example and talk about some of the different vocal layers that you can add and when it's appropriate, where it works best, and things like that. So this format's going to be slightly different than the other video, but hopefully it'll be helpful. For an example, I'm going to use a song that I recently put out called For You, and I have a fair amount of vocal layers here. You can see, especially in the chorus, that's usually where most of your vocal layers are going to be, is in the chorus here. And I have a variety of vocal layer types, so we'll discuss some of those different things. Now, this isn't a perfect example. I'll talk about other options that you could do for your song, and just know that each song is going to be different, but this should give you an idea of what will work for you. Also, I'll let you know that this is a heavy metal song, but that doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter what kind of music you're doing. For any style of music, the same concept is going to apply for vocal layers. Also keep in mind that your arrangement doesn't always have to be super complex. Depending on the kind of music you do, sometimes it benefits the song to have a lot of vocal layers. Sometimes it's better just to keep it super simple. You might only need one or two vocal layers. So let's start with the main vocal. There are different ways to write. Some people write the lyrics first, some people write music first. Typically, if we're talking about arrangement, I usually write the music first, and then I get the lyrics to fit in with the music. I try to write a rhythm to the lyrics and a melody that complements the music. You want it all to fit together. If you think about it, the voice is just another instrument, so it has a role, and even though it's in the spotlight, you still want it to match with the music. You don't want them to be two separate things. But the reverse is true as well. If you write your vocal and melody first, you want to make sure that the music is going to support that vocal and melody, and that the music isn't covering up or too chaotic when the voice is trying to express something. If you're trying to flow with the music, you want to make sure that you're not covering up any really cool parts. You want to make sure that you're actually following the rhythm of the music, and you want to make sure that your vocals have some kind of pattern that fits nicely with the music. Typically, you don't want to just keep singing like these long, ongoing, ever-changing melodies. You want some kind of structure that's going to fit nicely with your music. Now, just to give you a little bit of background about this song, it's kind of a personal song to me. I wrote this several years ago. My friend found herself in a bit of trouble, and she was kind of cutting everyone off, not really letting anyone through, and I thought, I'm her best friend, you know, she'll let me through, and I kind of tried to reach out to her, and she cut me off, and that really hurt, and it's really frustrating when you care so much about someone and you're trying to help them and they just won't let you. And so this song is very aggressive, and it was just my way of getting out that frustration and the desperation to just want to help someone and being unable to. So the main riff is very aggressive, and you'll notice that when we get into the verses, at this time I was starting to get into kind of progressive metal, and so I was experimenting with odd timing. So you'll notice there's sort of a 7 count in the verse. I'll let you hear it. Okay, so that's the main riff, and you can hear how in those verses it sort of cuts off short. Instead of that typical 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, it kind of cuts short. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, and it sort of has this jarring effect. So as a writer, I want to complement that. You know, I want to make sure what I'm writing vocally is going to fit in with that. So I'm going to go back to the first verse. Now you'll notice that it's a little different because this is the intro of the song, so it's not going to be the full band. I just wanted to let you hear what it sounded like in context with the music. But for the opening of the song, when my vocal comes in, notice how the last line ends right in sync with that sort of jarring effect. So the last word or the last syllable of each phrase ends right at that jarring beat. 1, 2, 3. Well, I know you've coped with. You know, it's bam, right there. That's something to keep in mind. If your song has a certain riff, you want to make sure that you are in sync with it. You don't want to be just kind of singing to your own rhythm. You want to follow the music. Another thing you'll notice about the song, so once it kicks in, it returns to the regular 4 count, just 1, 2, 3, 4. It doesn't have that jarring effect anymore, but the vocals are sticking to kind of the same pattern. It works for both parts. But also, there is a common vocal pattern here. You'll notice I start singing low, and then I go kind of high, I go back to the low melody, and then I go high again. So let's listen to the next verse and just notice that it's going to have the same vocal pattern that I did at the beginning. So that's something you want to think about with your melody. You want your melody to move, and it doesn't have to be super complicated, but patterns are good. Patterns are something that people can follow and that they can connect with. And you also want to think of the whole context of the song. You're building up to something. So most of the time, in most cases, your chorus is going to be very big. You want your verses to be a little bit smaller than the chorus so that you can actually build up to it. If your verses are really complex and really big, and then you get to the chorus and it's also complex and big, then there's just no dynamic to the song and the listener is going to lose interest. So in order to keep your song sounding interesting, you want that dynamic. So let's go ahead and have a listen to the chorus. So you might notice that there's kind of some gaps in the phrasing there, kind of at the end when I'm singing, just know that I'm sorry for you. There's kind of a gap there, and the reason for that is because the other layers are going to fill in that gap, but we'll talk about that later. So let's move on to the bridge. A lot of times the bridge can be the biggest part of your song, but in this case, I actually bring it down. I tone it down, and we get to sort of this kind of pretty guitar melody section. You'll notice that the music comes down, and so my voice comes down too. I'm singing kind of lower, and I have this low melody, and then I'm going to sing the same melody, but an octave higher to kind of help build it back up to the energy and the aggressiveness of the song. So you can hear we started small, and then we brought it back up so that the song could kick back in for the guitar solo. So now we get to a guitar solo, and if you look at this section here, there's no vocals. And I hope that's obvious, that there shouldn't be vocals during a guitar solo or any solo, because you don't want to cover up cool parts. That doesn't make sense. This is the chance for the melody of the guitar to shine. And that's typically the thing. With most music, you've got rhythm and you've got melody, and they really pair together. And usually the rhythm is something that should sound good and should just be like a solid foundation, but on its own, it isn't super interesting to listen to. People like having some kind of melody to follow. And at the same time, if you have a melody but no rhythm, there's no context for the melody, so it's sort of hard to follow it. The two together are what work really well. So in this case, the guitar is taking over the role of the melody, but you can see that after the guitar solo, the vocals will kick in for the final chorus. Now, for the final chorus, sometimes it's good for your choruses to have some variation. Typically, you want the chorus to stand out so people know, hey, this is the chorus. You want it to be kind of the same each time, and it's very typical for the chorus to happen at least 3 times in the song. But you can do some slight variations just to keep things interesting. Nothing like too crazy. You still want the chord progression to be the same, but you can make some adjustments to the melody. So in the case of this song, the last chorus, you'll notice some slight variations to the melody. So you'll notice that last line, originally I was going down, just know that I'm sorry, just like that. I'm sorry that I haven't warmed up my voice, but this last variation, it goes up. Just know that I'm sorry, sorry, kind of like that. That's it. That was it. Just a little variation to the vocal there. And then the second half, instead of singing the same melodic phrase like I did last time, I actually go up higher. Instead of, and all this time, I sing, and all this time. So let's have a listen to that variation. So that whole phrase, that section right there, it's very similar to the melody that we've established in the other parts, but there's enough variation to where it just keeps it interesting. So that's the main vocal. Now we're going to look at the backup vocals.